My favorite, some stories I've heard is that I'm a premature baby.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. This is like a tremendous honor. I don't even know what this is, but it's a tremendous honor.
Awesome. Well, welcome. And we're going to get started
Okay.
by asking the first question, which is, what is your name?
My name is Janine Davis.
Okay, awesome. And you can look either at me or the camera. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So where were you born?
I was born in Bogota, Colombia.
Have you heard any stories about your birth or leading up to your birth?
No, I haven't actually. I'm not familiar with that time of my life. I don't know why I don't. Well, I mean, I know why I don't really know anything about it, but we've never really touched on it in my family. So.
Could you share why? Don't you know?
Um,
Question one.
It took me, yeah, question number one stumped me already. Well, it's taken me 40 something years to really speak about it openly.
Okay.
But I'm adopted, so I don't know. But some of my family members don't know. And it brings up some interesting things because in discussing it with my family members, they're like, well, the girls, basically my nieces, don't need to know necessarily, or it doesn't add anything because it's immaterial almost. And so it's almost bringing to light something that could be made material when it's not.
Yeah.
Not because we are of each other. We are beloved to each other,
Absolutely.
no matter what. So it's kind of a weird thing, and I'm sure it's controversial. Some people would be like, oh, I think she's ashamed. And I think that's also why I don't talk about it much, because anytime I've ever spoken about it, people are like, oh, that's why you're like this. I've had professional people tell me that, and I'm like, oh, look, I just made your job so easy. Now you can pigeonhole me, and then all of your heavy lifting is over. Yay. So it's interesting. I obviously have some internal energy and conversations about it because it's something that I still work through. I think it's my first real conversation about what rejection feels like.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
You manifested this question literally in the first 2
Yeah,
minutes.
great, Lewis. Cut.
Yeah, we're still rolling. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Thank you. So yeah, and I don't know any other than the fact that my birth mother died. I don't know any other details about it. And I was taken into my family as an infant, as a very, very young infant. So I don't know anything different. I don't know anything.
Okay. All right, so if you had to describe your childhood in one word, what would it be?
Fun.
Okay.
I remember having a lot of fun as a child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. What sort of things did your family celebrate?
Birthdays, all of the holidays, Thanksgiving. Even though my mother was Colombian, she was like a super patriotic American woman.
Yeah.
Like big time. So we always celebrated all of the American holidays and, well, particularly Thanksgiving. She loved it. We all loved it. Christmas, New Year's, lots of parties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you describe one of those holidays or celebrations, like what's happening? Or a memorable one?
Oh gosh. Oh God, to pick just one. As a kid? Or anytime?
Yeah, anytime. With the family.
With the family. So I think I would remember a Christmas, like already many moons ago now, like 12 years ago, when we were all in New Hampshire. My parents had a really beautiful home up in New Hampshire, and all the family gathered around. It was cold outside. It was cozy. It was warm. And my mother was happy because all of her kids and her grandkids were there. So I would remember that, just gathering in the dining room and having cooked like for hours and prepared for the meal and just sitting down and being in that warmth of love.
Okay. What was your family's attitude towards drinking and smoking?
Well, my dad's an Englishman. So attitude towards drinking is there more? So he was a very heavy drinker, actually, when I was growing up. But he was functioning. I didn't know it because all of my friends' fathers were the same. I didn't know that it could be problematic.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't know. He was never violent. He wasn't slurry. He wasn't like inappropriate. None of those things really. But I didn't know till much later that really it had become a problem after a while. But yeah, there was always alcohol in my home. There was never not alcohol in my home. My mother was a wine drinker. And every now and then they enjoyed cocktails. So for me, I grew up, it was very normal. It was only in later years when I realized that my father was drinking too much already when I was in high school that I started to create my own opinions about drinking. So, but, and smoking, my father was a smoker. So, I mean, we knew it was, later on in life, we realized it was bad for him or it was bad for your health. But again, when you're in an environment where that's the norm, that's the norm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the discipline like at home?
So my father worked a lot. And so when he came home, he was tired and impatient. And again, English, so children are to be seen and not heard. Yeah. So we were never I remember being spanked maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. Yeah. There wasn't egregious corporal punishment. Every now and then my mother would get really frustrated and throw a shoe, or something like that. But no, I never. I got grounded a lot. They knew that keeping me from my friends was like a fate worse than death for me. So that was the punishment that I endured. And otherwise, silence.
Okay.
Silence was a big punishment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What were they strict about?
Oh my God, everything. They were really particular with who I hung out with. They didn't care that so-and-so was having a sleepover all the time. They were, strict about my studies. They were strict about what I did, who I was with. They were always very concerned about influence, like what kind of influences I was getting into. And as watchful as they were, I got myself into all kinds of trouble. So thank God. Imagine if they were neglectful. I don't even know what would have been of me.
Can you share one of those troubles?
Well, I was really terrible especially when I was around 11 and 12. Uh-huh. I went through this crazy rebellious spurt in the Philippines, actually, when we lived there. And I would sneak out of my house. I would go to parties like crazy. And 12, yeah. Because the truth is, I was as developed then as I am now. And I thought I was a woman. Aw, how delusional. Anyway. And I remember asking my mom at 12 if I could go to a nightclub, and she just laughed in my face. She was like, what? I was like, yeah, my friends are going. She's like, I don't care. That's ridiculous. You two will have your time to go to nightclubs. And I remember being so angry, but now that I think back on it, I was like, what was I thinking? Yeah. It's ridiculous. No 12-year-old needs to be in a nightclub. But I thought so. And I had already tried cigarettes and had already tried, wine coolers. Mm-hmm. And this is all while I'm at friends' houses with my parents, and they're just at a gathering. Yeah. So yeah, in a way, I'm glad they were super strict because I really could have gotten myself into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings me, not that coincidence. What's your relationship status?
I'm single right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you had to define your love life up until today, what would you define it as?
Well, if it were all over in this moment, I can say that I loved and I was loved. And I had been married and divorced, but I had really good rides. And there's more in the tank. I know it. So, like, yeah, right now my love life is non-existent. And I think there have been times in my life where there have been lulls in the love life that I was devastated by it. But my cup is full. And so I'm looking for another full cup to match me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest lesson you learned about relationships?
I would say that it takes more than love to make a relationship work, which I think is very shocking. We're taught that love conquers all, but there are many ways to love, and we don't account for that. And we don't account for the fact that you can be really in love with someone and love someone, and they can love you. And for whatever reason, between you guys, you can't make it work because there are so many other ingredients that go into having a successful life with someone and building partnership with someone. And I think that's the biggest surprise, that I could love someone so much and they could love me back and still it doesn't work. It's shocking.
So could you describe how it was to go through a divorce?
Yeah, so in my case, it was hard, but I knew it was also inevitable. As much as I can sit here and say he wasn't for me, I can freely say that I wasn't for him. We were not well matched at all, except for the fact that we did actually happen to really love each other. But we're not compatible in any way that, again, goes into making and sustaining a lifetime with another person. We had extremely different visions for the world. We had different work ethics. We had different ways of being intelligent. We were just very, very different. We had a lot of chemistry, and there was a lot of love and a lot of affection. But again, to make it work, we didn't have those integral ingredients to make that a successful union. So it was difficult. I was lucky though, because my husband and I decided, I said, we really should separate. Like we can do better for each other apart. In other words, like I felt towards the end of my marriage that someone else could love him better. And so we were lucky in the sense that we parted friends, and we literally went into the courthouse arm in arm to sit down to get our divorce granted. And that was very sad. That was very sad because you don't get married with that outcome in mind. We all know it's possible, but that's not the point. So it was very, very sad for me, especially because his parents have been married for 40-something years. My parents were married 45 years before my mother died, so it was really death till death do us part. I never thought I would be divorced. But then again, I never thought that I wouldn't marry the right person for me. So.
Who's the right person for you?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I haven't met him yet, but but I do know he's out there.
Okay.
Like of that, I am as sure as the sun will rise tomorrow. That's how sure I am of that too.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Up until today, what is one of the most profound victories you've had?
Leaving the safety of my job of 10 years and throwing myself into the embers and flames of entrepreneurship has been one of the greatest successes. And again, not because I'm like rolling in it or but the fact that I had the courage to bet on me is something that is not lost on me. The victories also I would count are my interpersonal relationships of overcoming and forgiving. And also, even in my divorce, I feel victorious because we did part friends. And what I didn't tell you in the last question is that my ex-husband died suddenly after our divorce. And the only reason I didn't jump off of something, because it's a catastrophic loss, because he was such a dear friend and such a shock, and he was only 39, was because I made sure that we were good to each other. I was good to him. And by de facto, because I showed up that way, so did he. We were good to each other until the end.
Have you ever told yourself there's something wrong here?
On what day?
Can you recall what was like the earliest time that you said like something wrong here?
Like in my life, or
Yeah, in general, in your life.
yeah, I've always had a sixth sense about people or situations, or yeah. I mean, from a very, very young child, from really, really like a young little girl, I always knew I could smell certain things, or I could feel certain things. So, yeah.
So have you made any decisions based on that intuition?
Yes. And I've equally ignored that intuition. So now I make my decisions in the integrity of that intuition. But for many years, I didn't. Even my marriage, I will confess, I knew it was probably not the best thing to do. But I'm like, we'll work it out. We're so in love. How could it not work? But
Yeah. How about, have you ever told yourself, I am on my own?
oh, yeah. Isn't that like the perfect little victim story? Yeah. I have many times. I'm on my own. I felt very on my own after my mother died. I felt very on my own in many different times in my life. Now I recognize it as a story because I have been very fortunate. I have really good friends. I have a really loving, imperfect family that is there for me if I ask. It's one of the things that I've learned is that it's easy to feel alone when that's your consistent narrative, because you don't allow yourself to be loved. You don't allow yourself to receive support. So I've caught myself in the last number of years doing that, and I call myself out on it because it's not true.
Who are you becoming?
I am becoming the best version of myself. I am becoming who I know I was meant to be.
And who's that?
A person who owns every inch of who they are at any given time and is out there in the world, speaking, doing, trying to make a difference while growing with people. You know, never pretending that I have the answers, but always being space to create another dialogue, another step, another possibility. So, yeah.
So I'm going to add another question. You just came up, this question.
Okay.
Yeah. So you are, how old are you now?
45.
Okay, so Janine at 45 has a time machine,
Mm-hmm.
and she travels to Janine at 25.
Mm-hmm.
What do you talk about?
Girl, you better strap in, because this thing is, I would tell Janine at 25, pay attention to your life. Be present with your life. It goes really fast. And it's easy to ignore and take for granted that time, but that time is really, really precious. And I would tell 25-year-old Janine, you have something to share and something to contribute in this world. It's not just for everybody else. It's for you too. So get it, move it. And, you know, I would tell my 25-year-old self, bet on you.
Awesome. All right. If your life is a resume, all the experiences you've had, what do you qualify for? And this job does not have to be, this job title doesn't need to exist. But given all your life experiences, put it on paper, boom, what can Janine apply for or create for a position?
I think Janine could apply and create for exactly what Janine is doing now, life coaching and building a personal development company. Because, we've all had our knocks and I've come through them. And I am always willing to grow from each and every one of those experiences and to pay attention and to call myself out and to be space with another human being. So,
Okay. All right. Now let's fast forward 100 years from now.
yeah.
And this is going to happen, but hopefully not anytime soon, but we're going to die.
Yeah.
Right? What's being said about Janine in her eulogy?
Janine was love, and she made me feel loved. She made me feel like I mattered. And that is her legacy to this world. And it can sound like a little trite and almost even a little corny, but I have lost people, and ultimately that's all that's left anyway, if you allow it to be. And that's something that grows even when the person's gone. You never stop. It's really, love is omnipotent. It has no time, no space, no anything. It's the one true intangible that carries on even after your last breath. So,
Who's there?
who's at my funeral? Well, every head of state, Madonna. No, I'm just kidding.
She's still alive?
I know, really. My God,
amazing.
she lived forever. Several generations of my family. My nieces, children's children. So, yeah, family.
Now you have however long you want to give some parting words to the people that are watching. So you can look at the camera and give them what Janine has in mind.
I guess my parting words would be to be thankful that anyone would ever even take the time to watch. And if anything I've said that connects, always feel free to reach out to me. And I would say, bet on you. When the chips are down or whatever, bet on you. That's the best advice that I have been given or read or listened to. And it's something that carries you through even really, really dark times. And the dark times don't last. So you are bigger than your circumstances, and you are greater than any adversity that could come your way. And I would also say that all of us were born on purpose, with purpose. If you do the arithmetic, the fact that we were born at all is really an incredible miracle. None of us are a mistake, no matter how we came to be. And I believe that we are here to share, and how dare we not? So, share.
Yay!